I was telling them in the beginning that this is one of your other kind of movies. You do comedies as well, and some people say, oh, they've done really that. You did Joe, Prince Avalanche, and also George Washington. But you also can do these comedies that are for mainstream audiences. And it's funny because I was watching the end of the film, but you know, in terms of mise en scène, there's something that you always put in your films as well. So for you, it's not so different than doing like a film like we've seen here, like Manglehorn.
Yeah, it's not, for me, it's not different at all. I mean, mainstream is a weird thing to say, because I think my sense of humor is very weird, and it's just, sometimes, like Pineapple Express is the only commercial hit that I've had, although I've made some bigger budget studio movies, but this is the only one that people really, as a broad audience, responded to really enthusiastically. So that was really exciting to think that my weird sense of humor translated to something that people would line up to see. I remember the first time I showed the movie to an audience, and I went to the theater to see, you know, where I was going to watch an early cut of the film with people, and there was like 1,000 people in line to see a movie that I'd made, and I had no idea how to process that feeling, because usually there's 8 or 9 people. I'm not being modest, like I just am very accustomed and have since regained that impression of my career. But it really feels great when people watch your movie and enjoy it and tell their friends to see it. But yeah, this was a special one where I feel like I was able to take the strange things that I think are funny. And maybe it's because it's a stoner film, and there's a lot of people who are high when they watch it. So maybe that's helpful. But I don't know. We worked really hard and had a lot of fun, and I'm glad people appreciate this movie.
So I was wondering, because you had fun. You mentioned that you had fun, but at the same time, I know you work fast and you work hard. So how was the atmosphere on the set? People had to be like professional, because this cannot be just fun. It's hard work, isn't it?
I mean, I've had a lot harder jobs. Like, this is fun. But you know, you work long hours, and there's pressure because people are spending a lot of. This is the first time anybody gave me a lot of money to make a movie, a studio movie, Sony Pictures. But it was an interesting time. I don't know why I got this job. There's no reason I got the job other than Danny McBride, the actor that plays Red in the movie. I went to college with him. And we've been very good friends for 20 years, and he met Judd Apatow and Seth Rogen, and they were telling him about this script that Seth and his writing partner Evan Goldberg had written, and they said, who do you think would be an interesting person to direct it? And he mentioned my name, and they started laughing, and he said, no, I'm serious. And so I got a call from Judd Apatow, the producer. And he said, will you come in and meet me and Seth about this movie? Or he said, will you come and meet us on the set of this movie, Knocked Up, that they were making at the time? So I went and met him and had lunch with him, and it was very nice, and it was funny, and then the next day, there was a script. I went home to New Orleans, where I was living, and there was a script there for this movie, and it said, are you interested in discussing this script? So I read it, and I liked it, and I wrote him an email and said, I'm interested in discussing the script. And then he said, well, I'm busy right now, but when the movie's done, we'll talk about it. I said, let me know. I'm happy to make, I just made this movie, Snow Angels, or I was editing Snow Angels, which is a very dramatic movie. It's here. But it's, you know, about sad stuff and dramatic issues. So I love the idea of making something funny, because I just wanted to lighten up, because I was getting depressed. And so he kept telling me, and I'd email him a couple weeks later saying, hey, just checking in. Love to talk about Pineapple Express. Sure thing, man. Busy right now. It's crazy. And then one day he just said, okay, we're gonna make it. So I said, okay. There was no real. He said, here's what he said. He said, don't answer your phone for 48 hours. So I said, okay. He said, unless your mom calls, then you can talk to her. But don't take any Hollywood calls for 48 hours. And so then he calls 2 days later and says, now someone from Sony is going to call you, and you can talk to her. She said, okay. And Amy Pascal, who was running Sony at the time, who was this amazing lady, calls me up and says, I haven't seen any of your films, but if I have to see one of your movies, what would I see? And I only made depressing, low-budget indie movies, so none of which are applicable to this. And I hadn't been given a chance to pitch my version of the movie anyway, so I didn't know what was going on. Because no one asked me what I thought of the script. They just asked me, he just said, we're making it. And then, and so I told her she should see All the Real Girls, because it has some charming romance and bits of humor in it, and Danny McBride has a little role in it. And so she called me back the next day and said, okay, we'll make it, and you can direct it. And I never pitched the movie. So it was the easiest job I've ever gotten before or since. And I think everybody's just too busy to think about the fact that they're hiring this dramatic director for a movie like that. So then I did feel pressure, because I didn't want to feel like I tricked them. So I did feel pressure to make it really good. But they didn't give us a lot of money to make it. They gave us a comedy budget. Like, they gave us the same budget they gave Superbad, but I tried to make it into an action movie. So then I had to call in a lot of favors and try to have stunts and car chases and shit like that we couldn't really afford, but I'm pretty good at convincing people to do weird things. So yeah, we got to make a bigger movie than anybody expected. And then I showed the studio the film for the first time, assuming they were going to hate it and think I was an idiot. And then Amy Pascal, the lovely head of the studio, said, what can we do for you? What would you like? And I said, what do you mean? And she said, what can we do? I like the movie and I want to help you make it even better. What would it take? And I said, I want a Huey Lewis and the News song at the end. So first I said I want a Ray Parker Jr. song. And she said, you can't do that because he got sued. He did the Ghostbusters song, and then they got sued by Huey Lewis and the News for the Ghostbusters song. And so I said, well, then I want a Huey Lewis and the News song. So then that's at the end of the movie. I don't know. Nobody asked that question.
What is weird is that this film worked in the box office, like we were saying, and then Hollywood starts, this guy can also direct big films or bigger, and then Your Highness came,
And then Your Highness came. I watched Your Highness for the first time in 4 years tonight, and I think that's my favorite movie that I've made. It's very. I understand that most people don't like it, but I really enjoy it. And it's an interesting opportunity. If someone says, "Hey, we like what you did. Now you can do anything you want to do." You can either make Pineapple Express 2, which would be a lot of money in your pocket and you can get rich, or you can bet it all and make something insane, because how often in life do people say you can do whatever you want to do professionally? And like, I don't know, I didn't at that time know anyone that had ever been greeted with that type of a decision before. And someone probably more conservative than me would have played it safe and made Pineapple Express 2 or something more along the lines of that movie. But Danny and I had been talking about making this movie since we were in college. We talked about someday we're going to make this movie, Your Highness, and all these far out ideas when we'd be fucked up in the college dorms. And then someone says, well, you can make whatever you want. And I mean, that's an abbreviated version of it, but it really was an industry looking at us saying, you made a really weird movie work and make everybody a lot of money. We do it again, and we'll give you even more money, and you can be even weirder. And I think I crossed the line. And that movie pissed a lot of people off and was not a hit. It lost a lot of money. But I'm still really proud of it. Actually, when I watched it tonight, I texted Danny after it. I said, I can't believe how proud I am of that insane movie that we made, and I can't believe that anyone allowed us to make it. I mean, he's walking around with a Minotaur dick around his neck for 20 minutes at the end of the movie.
You could choose Natalie Portman.
And Natalie Portman's running around saying the most vulgar things. And, it was just Franco's, exploiting him again, and Zooey Deschanel. And it was an amazing opportunity to be, to run away with mom and dad's credit card and just go berserk. But it's a hard thing, it's a hard choice, because, people want you to, if you're successful at one thing, if you're David Fincher and you make 7, you make a lot of serial killer movies because you get paid a shitload to make the same thing over and over, and like you have this signature. If you're Alfred Hitchcock, you make a lot of the same kind of thing. You become a brand of yourself, and whether it's Your Highness or Manglehorn or George Washington, I like to not do that. So it makes I have a less fancy wardrobe and don't drive as nice a car as those guys, but I get to have fun and try new things and fuck up every now and then, and occasionally, like that movie, do something that's successful.
But then it's incredible because then you got punished because after Uranus, they say, okay, go back to do your own films. But then this last year, Warner called you to do Our Brand is Crisis.
Yeah, I mean, I think my agent's confused by it as well, but I think the notion of goodwill in the the movie business is full of so many dickheads and assholes that when you're nice and have fun and make everybody's job relatively pleasant every day, they're rooting for you, and so that's what I have fun and I work with my friends and everybody comes to our set and they laugh and we're in the editing room and everybody's open-minded and it's a very collaborative type of environment. So people wish I was really successful. They want me. They're rooting for me, and so and I feel good about that. Like I get the sportsmanship award, but I'm never gonna win first place. But so then, I make some smaller movies because the bigger studio movies don't want me to spend their money sometimes, and then Sandra Bullock steps up and says, "Hey, I like the movies that you make, and I think it's an interesting idea. Will you do this movie with us?" And then if you're Warner Brothers and Sandra Bullock says that she likes this director, and she just made you a shitload of money off Gravity and Blindside and big movies, then you have to listen to her, I guess. But they were all really nice, and we had an amazing experience making Our Brand is Crisis, which is, again, not a kind of movie that a studio typically would want to make. But by having Sandra Bullock in it and be supportive of me, we got away with making another crazy movie. And you would think I would learn my lesson, but I feel like if someone says, "Do you want the key to Dad's Porsche?" I'm gonna drive fucking fast and go somewhere weird because I can, and ultimately someday people are gonna not allow me to do that. So when they do allow me to do it, I'm gonna be bad. So.
Questions, preguntas?
Is it gonna be pineapple too?
We've talked a lot about Pineapple Too. I don't know. It might be too long. It might. Everybody's kind of so, between me and James and Seth and Danny, everybody's so crazy and busy all the time. We talk about it a lot, but I wanted to make it like about cocaine wars in South America. Like Clear and Present Danger or Scarface. But then they did. I visited the set of This Is the End when they were doing the Pineapple Express 2. If anybody saw This Is the End, they did this thing that they were meaning to make fun of me. But I really, it was amazing, and so I kind of felt like that would be the movie, and then we should just make it for like $10,000, and then. So I mean, if you made that movie for $10,000, you would make $20 million off of it, and then we'd all get all of it. So then why not just do that? Because it'd be just as much fun, and just make the shitty cheap version of it. It'd be probably funnier than the Bad Boys 2 version of it. That's kind of how I pitched. I wanted to really escalate it and do like a Michael Bay movie. But for one reason or another, it hasn't happened, and we still talk about it every time I see them. I feel like it may be too. Like now we're all just getting old and a different kind of weird.
Just one more. Throughout the movie, did you guys smoke like all day, regularly?
Do we smoke all day? No, you can't really work because I fall asleep for one, and I can't parallel park a car. So try to direct a movie.
Yeah, it's Franco and.
Franco never smokes. Yeah. So that's like this nasty herbal shit that he's smoking through it. It looks really pretty, but Danny and Seth, we just kind of try to behave ourselves. But there's a guy that comes to the door. There's two guys that come to the door at Franco's house that he says are lingerers.
Yeah.
So one of them is this guy from my college that's just this amazingly confident nerd, which I love. I love nerds that are arrogant and like confident about things. And then the other one he was Franco's stand-in, who was our technical consultant because he grew weed, like he had a license to grow it. So he would come up at the end of the day and say like, "Hey man, you want to party? Do you want to listen to music? Do you want to just chill out, or do you want to focus?" Like he was like the doctor on set. Yeah, I forget his name, but he was a wild guy. I made him get a little rat tail for the movie. Looking good.
Yeah, terrific work.
Thanks. I'm glad that it continues to entertain people and.
Us four, we've seen the movie like 1,000 times. we saw this on the net. We have to go there.
Oh, that's.
Everybody here is just really appreciate it.
You know, I think just for me personally, it's just nice to know that, because again, this movie when it came out in Europe, it didn't do well at all. Like, and so it's taken a few years till people, you know. But what I appreciate is that like the next generation of potheads are always going to be like, initiated. Like my dad hates this movie so much because he knows that I'm just influencing bad behavior. But it was funny. There's this big comic book convention in San Diego every year called Comic-Con, and that's where we showed the movie for the first time. And my dad was there, and I watched him watch it, and he was mortified. He didn't laugh one time. I sat behind him watching it. He was just like, what has my son done? Like, he's corrupting the youth. But I just look at it as like, you know, a young kid hanging out, you know, figuring it all out. He's going to have fun watching this movie, and that'll happen for another 10 years, and then the next movie will be like that, you know? But we don't have Cheech and Chong anymore, you know, so every now and then I like to imagine some kid being introduced to Pineapple Express and thinking it's funny.
That's the
Yeah,
future.
yeah. With any luck.
What's the best pod movie ever?
What's this one?
Exactly.
I mean, we watched a lot of them. We watched a lot of them and tried to, you know, find our inspiration and influence. But it was fun too because nobody was looking when we made this movie, and there could be weird lines like, I remember one time there's a line that Ed Begley Jr. says in it. It's my favorite line in the movie. That my friend said at a bar. One time a friend of mine was. This guy was messing with his cousin at a bar. He has a really hot cousin, and so this guy was trying to chat her up. And so my friend Scott was like, "Stop talking to my cousin." And the guy went, so he grabbed the guy by the throat and said, "If you don't stop talking to my cousin, I'm gonna take you outside and fuck you in the street." Which, hearing that's scary, but thinking about it's very funny. And just being able to, like, when we were trying to think of something intimidating that Ed Begley Jr. might say when they all storm into his house and with his daughter, I just thought that was a funny thing to hear this normal dad say.
You had a question?
Can you tell us just a little bit about how the script evolved from the first time you read it to like final product?
Yeah, how the script evolved? You know, we improvised a ton. The whole ending of that movie, I just snuck in at the end of the movie. That was not in the script. We couldn't figure out how to end the movie. So, but one thing I did know is that there were so many plot holes that we never addressed during the movie that I thought, well, let's just have the end of the movie just tell everything that's questionable about the movie so that you can't criticize it because you know that we know what we're doing. You know, by talking about how many times he's been shot, it like we'll call attention to it rather than just if you didn't do that. I think it used to end when they blew up the thing, and I just thought it was important to come up with some. So we just literally. That was the last thing we shot of the movie, and I just showed them the rough cuts of the movie, and then we just talked about it, and we just noted all the plot holes in the movie, and then they talked about it. And the whole movie was that kind of an experience. Because Seth has this writing partner Evan that wrote the movie with him, and Evan's really funny. And he hangs out on set, and he just gives you little notes of ideas, of alt lines that you could do. You know, if you're running the scene. He's just like, hey, here's a joke that might be funny, and so then I'll just yell it out there in the middle of the take. Like when they're at Danny's house, at Red's house for the first time, he's talking about his cat's birthday party. That was me and Evan just coming up with dumb shit that they could talk about. And I had to leave set at one point because I kept laughing so hard when Danny would talk about how it was his cat's birthday. And then I made him shave his armpits, and like the whole day was just like, again, it's just those opportunities when someone says, you're like the puppet master, and people will do what you say today. It makes you really happy, and you can use that. Like there's a lot of terrible dictators in the world, but then there's also people that have this kind of access and they just have a lot of fun and laugh a lot, and that's the kind of dictator I'd like to be.